The blueprint of this vampire isn't beauty, it's rot. In both the 1922 classic and the 2024 film, the creature reads as a corpse that kept moving. Skin drawn tight like parchment, limbs too long, rodent teeth, pupils sunk so deep they feel like holes. Becoming Nosferatu isn't an upgrade, it's a biological downgrade that advertises the curse to anyone who looks at you. That visual rule pairs with the most important mechanical rule the 1922 film cemented for screen vampires. Sunlight isn't a nuisance, it's a kill switch. First light means instant erasure. No struggle, no bullshit. So every encounter becomes a race against dawn, and every act of baiting or sacrifice is a viable tactic. What makes this lineage unique is how it behaves like an outbreak more than a stalker. Orlok arrives on a coffin ship crawling with rats. The creature doesn't need to drain the cast one by one. Its presence warps the environment into epidemic horror. That pestilence in a body idea is why later worlds that treat vampirism as a pathogen or ecological collapse feel like spiritual heirs to Nosferatu. The 2024 take keeps the cadaverous look and the plague logic, but adds a personal terror, obsession. This Nosferatu fixates. Windows, stages, bedrooms, spaces that should stay human become portals for a slow, possessive haunting. It's predation with intent, not appetite alone, and it lets the film intertwine rot and sickness with one person's life being dismantled in real time. Put together, the old and the new sketch, a single clean profile. Nosferatu is a sentient contagion wearing a human shape. The body is decayed, the sun is final, rats and rumor are his advanced scouts. And in modern retellings, the epidemic narrows to a single target until dawn decides the outcome. This is where vampire lore gets both completely traditional and absolutely hilarious. In What We Do in the Shadows, the show uses kitchen sink vampire rules. Can't enter without invitation, killed by sunlight, turn into bats, hypnotize humans, all the classics. But it presents them as everyday bureaucratic problems for immortals trying to exist in modern Staten Island. The contrast between being a centuries-old creature of darkness and not being able to get into a nightclub because the bouncer didn't explicitly say come in is comedy gold. The vampires here, Nandor, Laszlo, Nadja, are functionally immortal and frozen at the moment they were turned. They need human blood to survive, and without it, they become weak, dried out versions of themselves. But the show's genius is showing how rigid supernatural rules create absurd modern situations. They can't go to the DMV without an invitation. They need their familiar Guillermo to arrange access to literally everywhere because humans don't casually invite vampires into spaces anymore. The series also expands vampire taxonomy in brilliant ways. Traditional bloodsuckers exist alongside energy vampires like Colin Robinson, who feed on boredom and psychological irritation instead of blood. He drains people's life force through boring meetings, long emails, and passive-aggressive office small talk. Modern bureaucracy is his hunting ground, and he's wildly successful because nobody realizes tedious corporate culture is literally killing them. Older vampires are significantly more powerful. Age brings strength, faster healing, and better control over abilities like shape-shifting and mind control. Younger vampires struggle with basic levitation and frequently expose themselves through rookie mistakes. The hierarchy is strict, enforced by a vampire council that treats ancient supernatural law like HOA regulations. What makes the lore work is how it treats immortality as both a gift and a prison. These vampires are stuck in a share house in Staten Island, dependent on human social rules they barely understand, navigating a world that's moved on without them. This classic film, and one of my favorite vampire movies, presents vampirism as the ultimate peer pressure nightmare disguised as freedom. You're not bitten and turned immediately. Instead, the process starts when you drink vampire blood, which creates a half-vampire state. You're suspended between human and undead, gaining powers like strength, flight, and night vision, but you're not fully transformed yet. The real change, the permanent one, only happens when you kill a human and drink their blood. Until that first kill, there's still a way back. It's a trap designed to feel like liberation, David's gang looks cool, acts cool, they just seem to have shit figured out, along with infinite freedom and power. They can fly, they're strong, they don't answer to anyone, but it's a con. That freedom is bait. Once Michael drinks from the bottle and becomes a half vampire, he's on a timer. The hunger grows, the changes accelerate, and the pressure to make his first kill builds until it feels inevitable. The head vampire structure is crucial. There's always a master who's pulling the strings and controlling the others, and if you kill the head vampire, everyone they've turned reverts to human. The whole movie, the kids think they're hunting David and his gang, but the twist is that Max, the normal-seeming video store owner who's dating their mom, is the real head vampire. He's been playing the long game, trying to create a perfect vampire family with Lucy as the mother figure. Max even passes every vampire test the boys throw at him. Holy water, mirrors, garlic, because Lucy already invited him into their house. Once a vampire is invited in, traditional protections stop working properly. His plan was always to turn Michael and Sam so their mother would be compelled to join them, creating a twisted version of a nuclear family with eternal life. Here's the thing about Vampire in Brooklyn that makes it completely different from your typical vampire flick. This isn't some lab accident or random bite situation. We're talking about an ancient Caribbean bloodline that goes back further than anyone can trace. Eddie Murphy plays Maximilian, and he's literally the last one. The entire species is down to one guy trying not to go extinct like a supernatural panda. The transformation process is intense and deliberate. You can't just get scratched at a party and wake up craving blood. A vampire has to completely drain you, then force their own blood back into your corpse to bring you back. It's less infection, more resurrection with a twisted catch. And not just anyone can become a vampire in this world. Maximilian is hunting for Rita, specifically because she's a half vampire with the right ancestry. Her bloodline makes her compatible to be his vampire queen. Without that genetic connection, the transformation is basically incomplete or fails entirely. Think about how isolating that is. You're the last of your kind, wandering Brooklyn in the 90s, desperately searching for the one person whose DNA is compatible with yours. It's like a supernatural dating app, with literally one match left in the entire world. The film frames it as romantic destiny, but really, it's species survival with a ticking clock. These vampires also break the rulebook in major ways. They can shapeshift into wolves, control animals, and can actually walk in daylight. Most vampires would turn into a pile of ash, but Caribbean vampires? They're powered by ancient magic that predates all those European vampire rules. Maximilian even creates a ghoul servant by forcing Julius to drink his blood, showing there's a whole hierarchy where pureblood vampires can raise like lesser undead minions. In Abraham Lincoln, the Vampire Hunter, this was a badass take on vampire stories because it takes American history and says, what if the real reason behind slavery was vampires? The vampire elder named Adam, who's over 5,000 years old and originally from Egypt, basically looked at the slave trade and thought, perfect blood supply that nobody will question. Plantations weren't just about cotton, they were feeding operations. The entire southern economy was a cover for industrial scale vampire feeding. The lore here is surprisingly tight. Vampires in this world operate in structured networks with a clear power hierarchy. The original vampire, Adam, sits at the top, and his bloodline spreads through every vampire beneath him. But an interesting twist to the plot was that vampires cannot kill other vampires due to a god's decree. It's a hard, magical rule. The dead cannot destroy their own kind. So Adam has to recruit mortal hunters. And that's where Lincoln comes in after a vampire murders his mother. This creates the perfect setup where Lincoln's personal vendetta evolves into full-scale political warfare, because the only way to hurt Adam's power structure is to build a human movement capable of killing vampires in massive numbers. The Civil War becomes a two-front battle, one against human slavers and another against an undead aristocracy that literally owns them. Silver is the only thing that works, which leads to this incredible sequence where Lincoln has to rush an entire train full of melted silverware and silver bullets to Gettysburg so Union troops can actually damage the undead Confederate reinforcements. Regular weapons just bounce off these guys. The film uses vampire lore to literalize systemic evil. If the undead can't kill each other, then corruption at the top can only be destroyed by the living organizing around shared morality and technology. The Michelsons are vampire royalty, and I mean that literally. They're the first ones ever created, which makes every other vampire in existence part of their family tree. Their origin story is tragic in that no good deed goes unpunished kind of way. Their mother, Esther, was a powerful witch who watched a werewolf kill her youngest son. Desperate to protect her remaining children, she created a spell using the sun for life, a sacred white oak tree for immortality, and the blood of a doppelganger to bind it all together. Their father, Michael, then laced wine with that same mixture, killed his own children, and they resurrected as the first vampires. The spell's design is poetic and brutal. Because their immortality comes from the sun, it now burns them. Because they're tied to the white oak tree, weapons made from it can kill them. And because they're created through blood magic, they developed an uncontrollable hunger that made them massacre half their village on day one, including the very doppelganger whose blood created them. It's basically a Greek tragedy with fangs. Here's what makes the originals genuinely hit different. When one of them creates a new vampire, that vampire is permanently linked to the original's life. If Klaus dies, every single vampire he's ever created dies with him. If Elijah gets staked, his entire bloodline collapses instantly. This makes each original a living anchor for thousands of vampires. You're not just killing one powerful vampire, you're committing genocide against everyone descended from them. The show also introduces Klaus as a hybrid, both werewolf and vampire, which creates this whole subplot about creating sired hybrids through his blood. But his emotional instability means every hybrid he makes is basically an extension of his centuries of family trauma and betrayal, a lineage of crash outs. New Orleans itself becomes a character, a city built and controlled by these first vampires, where the entire supernatural power structure exists downstream from one grieving mother spell that went horribly right. This origin story reframes Vlad the Impaler as someone who chose vampirism deliberately to save his people. The vampire who curses him isn't randomly evil. He's trapped in a cave as punishment for his own past sins, and he offers Vlad a conditional deal. Drink my blood, get 3 days of godlike power, but if you can resist drinking human blood for those 3 days, the curse ends and you go back to being human. If you feed even once, you're a vampire permanently, and I go free. It's a trial period with the worst possible stakes. For 3 days, Vlad gets superhuman speed, strength, enhanced senses, and control over bats and shadows. He can solo entire armies, turn into a swarm of thousands of bats, and basically become an unstoppable force. But the hunger builds every moment, and he's forbidden from drinking human blood. Resist, and you save yourself. Give in, and you replace the cave vampire as the new cursed source. The film uses this setup to explore sacrifice and damnation. Vlad uses his temporary powers to protect his kingdom from an Ottoman invasion, but every battle makes the hunger worse. The turning point comes when his wife is mortally wounded. She offers him her blood so he can save their people, and he drinks, locking himself into vampirism permanently. Once fully transformed, Vlad's powers become tied to darkness itself. He achieves near invincibility, but sunlight becomes a severe weakness. Silver can hurt him, though his healing is so fast it barely matters. Unlike random vampire outbreaks, this vampirism requires intention. When Vlad creates new vampires, they're fully loyal to him, building a bloodline under his direct control. The cave vampire is free. Vlad is cursed to immortality, and there's a suggestion they're playing an endless game across centuries. The film reframes Dracula not as an inherently evil monster, but as someone who sacrificed his humanity to protect others, then spent eternity living with that choice. Forget gothic castles and aristocratic seduction. Ultraviolet treats vampirism like a pandemic that escaped from a government lab. The vampires here are called hemophages, and they're the result of a weaponized blood disease called hemoglophagia. This wasn't some ancient curse. This was a bioweapon experiment that the government got catastrophically wrong. Violet gets infected when an infected hemophage bursts into the lab where her husband works. A cop shoots the guy, blood sprays into her face, and boom, she's patient zero for a new superhuman subspecies. Hemophages get enhanced speed, strength, senses, basically everything you'd want in a super soldier. But the trade-off is brutal. Catastrophic light sensitivity, shortened lifespans, and immune systems that are constantly failing. They're not undead, they're post-human. And the government's response? Full totalitarian lockdown. Vice Cardinal Daxus and the Archministry use fear of hemophages to justify mass surveillance, blood bank facilities that control both humans and infected people, and basically turn society into a biopolitical nightmare. The hemophage community fractures into factions. Some want a cure, others accept their mutation and wage guerrilla war against a regime that sees them as diseased subhumans. Violet gets sent to steal what her faction thinks is an anti-hemophage superweapon, but it turns out to be a kid named Six. He's a clone of Daxus, carrying engineered antigens designed to exterminate all hemophages. The real horror is that the cure and the weapon are the same thing. What makes this lore cutthroat is how it turns vampire mythology into a conversation about minorities and weaponized medicine. Violet's own body is failing because her hemophage metabolism is burning her from the inside out. Fighting for a cure might save her life but erase her people. Embracing the virus means accepting a short militarized existence dictated by state violence. There's no good option, just survival under impossible conditions. In Abigail, she looks like a 12-year-old ballerina, but she's centuries old with the full strength and intelligence of an ancient vampire. The film weaponizes underestimation. Everyone sees a kid who's been kidnapped, someone vulnerable who needs protection. Then she starts hunting them through the mansion, and suddenly, this sweet little kid is the apex predator. The transformation process is straightforward. Drain the human completely, give them vampire blood. They die and resurrect fully turned. No half stages, no gradual change. You wake up a vampire or you don't wake up at all. Age doesn't matter, which is the horrifying part. When you're turned, your body freezes at that exact age forever. Abigail was turned as a child, so she'll never age, never grow, never escape looking like something harmless. These vampires are exceptionally hard to kill. They heal rapidly from injuries that would drop a human instantly. They feel minimal pain, and they can survive damage that should be fatal. Blood isn't just food. It's fuel that increases their strength exponentially. The more they feed, the more aggressive and powerful they become. Starvation weakens them, but it takes extended periods to actually slow them down meaningfully. The film's best trick is showing how ancient vampires use psychological warfare. Abigail doesn't just attack people, she plays with them first. Music, games, manipulation, she breaks them mentally before she ever touches them physically. She enjoys control and dominance more than feeding. For the oldest vampires, killing isn't about survival anymore, it's entertainment. They're so far removed from humanity that murder becomes a hobby, a way to pass endless time by tormenting creatures who only live for a blink in comparison. Sunlight still burns them instantly, and the usual methods work: wooden stakes, fire, decapitation, but only if executed perfectly. Abigail can move fast enough to scale walls, flip across ceilings, and overpower multiple adult men without breaking a sweat. The juxtaposition of a child's appearance with centuries of predatory experience creates this deeply unsettling villain who's always 3 steps ahead because she's played these games thousands of times before. Forget elegant vampires and capes. The strain presents vampirism as a parasitic infection that's basically body horror meets epidemiology. The source is an ancient creature called the Master, one of the oldest vampires in existence, and his blood carries living parasites that completely hijack human biology. When someone gets infected, the parasite doesn't just change them, it rebuilds them from the inside out for one purpose: feeding and spreading the infection to others. The transformation is violently fast and deeply disturbing. Victims lose all body hair, skin turns corpse pale, teeth fall out entirely, and get replaced by a long, hollow stinger that shoots out from the throat. This stinger drains blood and injects parasites simultaneously, creating new infected in seconds. Once the parasite takes full control, the person is gone. Memories fade, emotions disappear, free will evaporates. What's left is a biological puppet controlled by the master's hive mind. These vampires operate like ants or bees, a distributed network controlled by a central intelligence. The master's thoughts are their thoughts. If he weakens, they weaken. If he gets stronger, they become more aggressive and coordinated. This makes the infection apocalyptically dangerous because killing individual vampires does almost nothing to stop the spread. You have to destroy the source, or you're just trimming branches while the root system grows. Silver is lethal because it disrupts the parasite inside them, but decapitation and complete body destruction are the only reliable kills. The show also introduces this nightmare detail where female vampires can be converted into parasite factories. Their bodies repurposed to grow and release massive numbers of new parasites. It's reproduction as industrial manufacturing, and it's as horrifying as it sounds. The Master has survived multiple historical plagues, hiding inside human disasters and using them as cover to spread unnoticed. The show treats him like an ancient strategic intelligence that understands human weakness and exploits chaos. The CDC framing, with doctors treating the outbreak like a disease epidemic, lets the show merge medical horror with supernatural mythology. What if vampires won? That's the entire premise. A mysterious infection spreads globally, turning most of humanity into vampires. Society doesn't collapse. It adapts. Cities are rebuilt to block sunlight. Vampires run governments, corporations, and research labs. They're not hiding anymore. They're the dominant species. The infection works like a virus that rewrites human DNA. Get bitten or exposed to infected blood, and your body shuts down and reboots as something new. Heart stops, body temperature drops, human food becomes useless. Blood is now the only fuel that keeps you functional. The change is fast and permanent, and it grants strength, enhanced senses, faster healing, and functional immortality as long as you keep feeding. But here's where the lore gets dark. Humans are nearly extinct, which means the blood supply is running out. Scientists create synthetic blood substitutes to keep vampire society running, but the artificial stuff doesn't work properly. Vampires who can't get real blood begin to starve, and starvation triggers horrific mutations. Their faces stretch into bat-like features, their minds collapse into feral aggression, and they turn into subsiders, mindless, violent creatures that attack anything nearby. Civilized vampire society is cannibalizing itself as the blood shortage worsens. The film introduces a cure discovered by accident. Controlled sun exposure combined with water immersion can reverse vampirism, but the real twist is that cured vampire's blood works like a chain reaction cure. If a vampire feeds on a cured human, that vampire also becomes human and can cure others through being fed upon. It's exponential salvation, but it requires mass sacrifice. The blood shortage is the perfect world-building engine. Scenes show blood ration riots, corporate executives debating whether to dilute supplies further, and wealthy vampires hoarding private reserves while the poor starve and mutate. The finale flips the feeding frenzy on its head. Instead of vampires spreading their curse, the cured humans spread humanity back through the population by offering themselves as bait. It's a brutal, visceral reversal that shows how quickly a power structure can collapse when its fundamental assumption that vampirism is permanent gets shattered. The Los Angeles underground is crawling with vampires, and most people have no idea. Day Shift presents vampirism as an ancient, hierarchical system with multiple distinct bloodlines. There are Eastern European vampires, Southern vampires, Uber vampires, spider vampires. Each subtype has different abilities, weaknesses, and behavioral patterns. Some are stronger, some are faster, some can contort their bodies in horrifying ways. The origin goes back to dark blood rituals performed long before recorded history. The first vampires were powerful and nearly demonic, and over centuries, their bloodlines spread and diversified. Every vampire alive today traces back to those original ritual-born creatures. Turning someone requires draining them completely and forcing vampire blood back into the corpse. There's no half state, no cure. You wake up fully transformed. Your body stops aging, your heart stops beating, and blood becomes your only sustenance. What makes the lore fascinating is the hierarchy. Not all vampires are equal. Older vampires and those closer to the original bloodline are significantly stronger, faster, smarter, and more resistant to damage. Lower tier vampires burn instantly in sunlight, but higher tier ones can survive brief exposure, making them exponentially more dangerous. It's a vampire caste system based on age and lineage. There's an entire black market economy built around harvesting vampire fangs, which are valuable commodities. Professional vampire hunters operate under a union-like organization that licenses hunters and regulates the market. Bud, the protagonist, works as a pool cleaner as his day job, which is perfect cover because vampire nests cluster in suburban houses and rundown buildings. Mundane service work gives him access to properties where vampires are hiding. The detailed vampire taxonomy justifies the film's insane action sequences. The apartment raid, where spider vampires attack from ceilings, contorting their bodies in impossible ways, or armored brutes that can tank multiple hits, it all makes sense within the lore's framework. Different bloodlines require different tactics. The real threat comes from Audrey's plan to flip the power dynamic entirely. She's working on real estate schemes and developing sunscreen-like products that would let vampires reclaim the San Fernando Valley. If vampires can walk in daylight, they stop hiding. The battle becomes about who controls the city once the sun stops being humanity's only reliable protection.